I think I have 1.5 hours, right?
Yeah, take as much as you need. Don't worry.
We most likely will break for a lunch at 1 o'clock ish, Rito. So
Okay.
We'll keep an eye on the clock for you.
Okay, so then let's start.
Yep.
So in the next couple of minutes, I will tell a little bit about our SAP integration, what we can do with one identity manager, and if it goes, yeah. So the agenda is, and there are some few points which are not bold because this is there are much more for SAP integration available. There is a specific bootcamp, I think, which was last week in Budapest.
Yeah, an advanced SAP bootcamp,
Yeah.
the very first one last week in Budapest, with only a very, very limited number of people possible.
Yes. So, and there is a bit more, which I think it would take in the end more than a day or two to go through all the points. So, but the important thing is, I think, to understand what we are doing with our SAP connector. So first, I think you have already seen also a bit from the connector side what we are doing. So we have all these very nice standard connectors, and in the standard connectors we have our SAP connectors. There are out-of-the-box connectors to SAP, which are fully integrated into the SAP system, beside all the other systems like Active Directory and SharePoint, Exchange, whatever. And we have also with Starling Connect a few other connectors for SAP in the end, which are the cloud offering of SAP. So these are these specific connectors. And the idea in the end is that we can extend our offering on the identity manager side to the various SAP systems, where we can leverage all the functionalities of identity manager to the SAP systems, such as the SAP R3 or new the S/4HANA systems. So to every system which is providing the ABAP functionality, where we can use RFC connections to it. So these are all the different SAP deployment modes. If you talk to customers, there are many different ways. So beside the, let's say, on-premise version of SAP with the R3 S4, there is a so-called private cloud S4. There is the private cloud S4 on-prem, private cloud S4, the cloud private edition, the public cloud. So there are different possibilities of the deployment. The only option which is not providing the RFC is the S/4HANA Public Edition, which is not providing this functionality. And the Cloud Private Edition, there is an RFC option, but it's turned off, and the customer has to turn on, excuse me, this in the end. So this is the standard SAP connector for the, let's say, normal SAP systems used at customer side in the end. Then there is the S/4HANA database, where we have also an own connector inside of Identity Manager to connect to SAP HANA databases. And the last in the end, or the integration to the GRC and the UME. This is specific for the NetWeaver Java option, which we can also integrate in the system. And last, through the One Identity Starling Connect, we have already connectors to SAP SuccessFactors, to SAP Concur, Litmos, SAP Cloud for Customers. So there are ongoing extensions to these kind of cloud options in the end we provide, either through the One Identity Starling platform, or it's also possible to use our Skim connector to do this by their own. The other option is also we can use our SCIM connector to connect to the SAP Cloud Identity Service. So this is something which is not or there is not an out-of-the-box connector, but we can do this through the SCIM connector directly. And then you have also the option if a customer, for example, is using already the SAP Cloud Identity Service and has already connected the SAP SuccessFactors, Concur, Litmos, and all the others, then we can use our SCIM connector to connect to these SAP Cloud Identity Service, and from there, the customer does not need to change anything. The only issue is if you have such solutions between, and this is independent if it's SAP Cloud Identity Service or something else. The problem is that we don't see in the end what's behind this identity service provider. That's the other problem we have for audit reasons, for example. So the idea of how in a, let's say, SAP world, we can provide a benefit to the customer is that we can either connect to the normal human resource, the HCM system on R3 or S4. We can connect either this system or SAP SuccessFactors or both. So as you know, there is no limitation of how many HR system in the end we are connecting to Identity Manager. So we can connect the HR system on the left side and consume then the data from there to create the identities, as you have seen the last days, what Simon and Ingvar was showing. And then we can provision not just to Active Directory, we can then also provision back to the S/4HANA, to the ECC system, BTP, SAP SuccessFactors, HANA, GRC, Java. So we have then the possibility to create the accounts, update the accounts on those systems based on this information we receive from the SAP HCM systems. So that's in the end in a overview what we provide on the systems. So a bit of background from the SAP systems, what in the end SAP is providing or what we can connect or how we connect. So first of all, our connector, as you maybe know, is a certified SAP connector. So we are the only company providing a sub-certified connector for this SAP S4 R3 systems, for the HCM system. It's very easy to prove this. You can go to the SAP partner website to check on. There are some other vendors, but they have specific connectors for the GRC part. But for what we provide, we are the only vendor providing a sub-certified solution, and it's there since a long time. So it's meanwhile more than 20 years we provide this kind of integration. From the documentation side, if you go to the documentations, there are several documentations available for the SAP part. And there is, first of all, the connection to the SAP system. So this is the first one. It's mentioned here R3, but it's also the same for S/4HANA. So there is no difference in the end from the documentation side. And then we have also 3 other documentations. One is for the authorization analysis function add-on. And there is also for the structural profile and for the compliance add-on 3 different documentations. What is the difference between? I will come to this later in the presentation. On the Starling side, as I said, we have specific connectors available for SAP. So if you go to Starling and if you want to try this out, then you can go to Starling, create your own account, and there you have then this options for the different type of SAP systems we provide next to SAP SuccessFactors. there are two different SAP success factors connector yet. There is a plan to bring this together, but at the moment we have two different. The reason is the SAP success factors HR connector is for the HR information, so for the employee data, the organizational information, and the other, the SAP success factors connector without the HR. This is for the users and groups in the end to manage the access to the SAP success factor systems. That's why we have two different connectors there available in Starling. If you want to build your own environment, there are some links with also some information and documentation where you can get your own SAP system. So the only, let's say, option which is not available anymore is the on-premise SAP system. There is the second last, this S4 HANA full activated appliance, which is available. Most of them are for 30 or 90 days available, all these trials, which gives you the option to build your own environment in the end and try these systems. And the links, I think you get the presentation after. You can use this to build your own environment if you wish. To set up the system, there is also some requirements you need from our side. So first of all, we need the SAP connector for Microsoft.NET, which is available on the SAP support portal. And there you need also an account to download this. So you need to register. And this is used for the connection from our side to SAP to do this and use the RFC functionality we need this connector to. Then there is also this users and authorization guide, which is in the end a guide which type of authorizations in SAP we need to do the synchronization. So which roles or which permissions in SAP we need in the end to do the synchronization. Without this, we can't synchronize in the end the information inside of SAP. And also for the BAPI calls, we have our own BAPIs. So this is part of the certification as well. So this extensions in SAP we provide with some additional functionalities which are not available from SAP side. And this is also a part of the certification we did with SAP to prove that this is something which is working in SAP. So the customer has to import this BAPIs into SAP. So there are 5 transport files the customer has to upload into SAP. Then also the synchronization project on our side, how to set up. And the last is there is a specific function for the CUA, the Central User Administration. There is also documentation how to connect to systems or customers using the CUA. What this means, I have also some slides in the presentation after. So the .NET connector, as I said, this is used for the RFC functionality to consume this on SAP side. We need this .NET connector provided by SAP. We need the latest version 3.1.2, which is also supporting the .NET Framework 4.8. And so we need this version, otherwise you will have some issues because also SAP fixed there some things in the .NET connector we require to use for our functionality. The ABAP code we provide, which is certified, is also has its own namespace. So it's a bit similarity of what we use with the CCC in our system. In SAP, there is also this called customer namespace. And in our case, it's this VIANet, which is providing all our extensions in SAP. And the customer can either transport this in the old-fashioned way, or there is a new option available since the higher version of SAP, which is this SAP AAK. It's the add-on assembly kit, which allows you also in the end to remove the transport file. You can remove it also in the old way, but it's a bit very tricky to get rid of this. So that's why if you do POCs or a customer wants to see it, then do this not in the production system. So do this in the test dev environment, or let's say the best way is do this in a sandbox where the customer in the end can delete the SAP after. And this transport file is required. So if you are not or the customer has not uploaded it and transport to the dedicated SAP systems, our connector is checking if this transport file is available. So if not, then you get an error message when you do the sync project. The system is really checking against the system if this transport file is available. So in the end, how this looks like in from an architectural view is you have the identity manager database, then you have the sync server where you have the SAP connector configured. In big environments, mostly the customer has a dedicated job server where they do the connection to the SAP system. On this job server, you need the .NET libraries installed. And then this server is doing the RFC connection against the application server or the different types of SAP options you have. There is a direct communication, which is doing the direct communication to the SAP server. And there are also two other options. In the SAP world, there is, for example, a message server, which is the central instance where in the end the job server is doing the connection to, and from there the message server is doing the calls then to the SAP system. Or the other option which is available in the SAP world is so-called SAP router, and there we are doing the connection against the SAP router. So these three options in the end you have with our connector to connect to SAP systems in the end. So these are common ways, especially the message server. It's a very common environment on customer side, latest in the production environment to connect to SAP systems. So from our side, we provide these different options. So the first is the sub-user and role management. That's the basis module in the end to connect to the SAP. Also on SAP side, it's called the basis module. It's I think it's BC called in SAP, where you do the connection to the SAP system. And then we have different add-ons like the SAP HANA connector, the compliance add-on, which is also used then for the SOD part, for example, the analyze authorization add-on for the transactions authorization objects, and the structural profile add-on, which is an option for the HR data. So on the HR side, you can have the so-called structural profile add-on. I have also some slides a bit more for this later, but these are the let's say topics where we can provide support for SAP, and we can integrate with SAP systems. So on the SAP side, it's the if you go on the on our side, as you have seen from Simon and also from Ingvar already, how the schema looks like on our side. So on the sub basis side, we have this subsystems. So as you have seen today, also it also has a name convention on our side. So everything which starts with SAP, that's used obviously in the end for SAP. So subsystems, submandant, sub-user, sub-role. That's specific for the basis part. Then we have for the CUA, the sub-user in submandant, which I come later what this means. And then we have also the sub-right, sub-function stuff, which is for the compliance add-on. And then on the HR side, we are using the standard tables like person, department managers that's used on our side for the HR data. On our side, how this looks like in the end, you will see then different possibilities on the manager. So first of all, it's one thing in SAP is it's a subsystem, and you can have several systems in the end. The subsystem normally has a 3-digit ID. In this case, it's called a T04. So that's the subsystem. This is also required when you connect directly to an SAP system. It's the subsystem ID which is used, and then you have the clients, which is in German called Mandant. And in a subsystem, you can have different sub-mandants in the end. And there are configurations in SAP which are system-wide. So which means it's valid for all the clients below a system. And there are configurations or objects which are on a mandant or client level in the end. So these are the user accounts, the group, the profiles, which are under a client. And you have other options like parameters, a license, which in the end are system-wide and are not specific for one client under a system. So this is a bit how SAP works in the end from a configuration perspective. So if you integrate then the system, this in the end looks then like this. If you are using a central user administration, the central user administration then has a master or the central client, which in our case is this T03800 client, which is the central client in SAP, and then this manages the so-called daughter system or Tochter system. So these are the systems which are managed then through this master client in the end. So every configuration then goes through the master client and are directly then transported to the different client system or daughter system, so-called, in SAP. So we are not connecting directly to this client systems anymore. So we are connecting to the master client. There is an option in Identity Manager to split this up, to allowing directly managing this. Many customers, they plan or they want to remove this central user administration to do this directly with Identity Manager. And in the end, Identity Manager is a kind of a CUA in the end, because we can do this. It's a very, very easy functionality. And also there are some benefits to do this directly and not go through this master client in the end. So there is an option where we can either connect directly to the clients or through the CUA, or in a case a customer has a CUA and wants to get rid of it, we have also the possibility to split this up directly in Identity Manager. There's a function for this, which allows you to do this kind of migrations in the end. So this was the bit background for the SAP systems. And now how we do the integration with the SAP systems. So if you go to the sync editor, I think you have seen this already, there is an option for the SAP system to connect to. And if you go to the system and connect to the systems, it guides you through the wizard. And then the first is it checks if the .NET connector is available. So if the .NET connector is not available, you will get the first error message saying that the DLLs are missing and you can't proceed in the end for the configuration. And then you have this option here, which I have shown before. you have this 3 different options how to connect to the SAP systems, like directly to the application server, to the R3 router or the message server. And then the next step is you have to provide the name of the sub host or the router, and then you need this system ID, which is this 3-digit, which was the T04 before, or in this case it's the S4, so it's the same functionality independent if it's an R3 or S4 HANA. As I said, there is no difference between the two systems. And you also need the system number, so this is required. And the system number normally is also if you need to open the port for the RFC connections, the TCP/IP connection to the system. This 3 digits normally is on system side. It's I think it's 3600. Then it's the last 2 digits of the port reflects also the system number. So if you have issues to connect to an SAP system, then you can ask which, or you can say if the system number, this 3600 is not open to the system, this reflects in the end also the port number, which needs to be open between the SAP system and the Identity Manager job server. And then on the next page, one important thing is if you are not enabling this SNC, which is the so-called secure network connection configuration, this is a very specific part of SAP. So if SAP is not using also between the SAP system this SNC, this means that all the datas in the end are going clear text between the SAP systems and also between our system and SAP. So most of the customer, they are using SNC already, which is, I would say, should be enabled, because this is in the end encrypting the data flow between SAP and SAP, as well between our job server and SAP. So for me, I would say this is a must to encrypt the data flow in the end between the systems. And this, as I said, is a very specific option we provide as well in our connector. And there we can enable this SNC and to encrypt the data flow between our system and SAP in the end. Then on the next page, you need to enter the client information. So the client where you have to, or you want to connect to, either, for example, to the subsystem if you want to manage users and groups, or to the HCM system to get the data for the HR data. And the name or the logon name is the service account, and the password of the service account in the end you want to use. And the login language, this is also specific, because also in SAP, like we have in Identity Manager, you can configure SAP with different languages. And this language also then in the end is the information in which type of language SAP is providing the text information for roles, for example. So if you type in here German, then you get all the texts in German, and in this case you get everything in English. On this page, then you have to say if this is a CUA system or if it's a system which is directly connected. In this example, it's a direct connection. And then I think you have seen this already. If you click on test now, then the system is checking if everything is there. If, for example, the transport file is not transported to the system, then it fails, and you will see here also the notification that this transport file is not found, and the connector cannot connect because of this missing transport files in the system. On this page, this is specific if you connect to the HCM system. If you can click on this show expert settings, and then you get some additional information. for example, which type of address of the users you want to use for the address information of the users, or the identity information you want to read from the HCM side. And one of the last options is you have the possibility to extend the connector schema in the end. So many customers, as you have seen on our side with our customer extension, in SAP it's very common that the customer is extending SAP with their own tables or attributes or whatever. And so this is very a common scenario, that a customer has a dedicated table or attributes they want to read from SAP, where they store some additional information. And you have the possibility in the end to extend the schema. And there is in the documentation, it's on the last part of the documentation, you have the option to extend the schema. So in this case, so the yellow part is this user table USR05, which is an example to show you how you can extend with additional tables to read additional attributes from a dedicated table. In SAP, it's normally a set, so-called set tables, which are customer tables. And this gives you the option to extend the schema also on our side to read additional information into the identity manager. And last, if you click on finish, the system then shows you the configuration, how to connect to the identity manager database. And then in the end, the schema gets loaded. And after it's finished, you get an additional wizard, which is showing you then the different project templates. So this is important thing, because here you have to choose what kind of objects in the end or data you want to synchronize to the identity manager. So the different options is, so the blue one, it is the HCM employee and department data. This will read all the employee data, the departments, cost centers, locations, all the information from the HCM system to identity manager. And the others, like the base administration, are the information if you connect directly to an SAP system for the users and the roles, the groups, or the CUA subsystems if you use child systems in SAP. And the others is for the authorization objects, or the structural profile information. So the different types here you can choose for the identities and departments. You have to choose this HCM employee and department sync project template. So base systems, I mentioned authorization objects. So these are the different types in the end. Then on the next level, you can choose if you want to read and write. This is also if you are in a POC and the customer, for example, which also it happens from time to time that the customer wants to read back. They want just to see that we are able to read the information specifically for the HCM system. They don't want to write back into the system. And here we have the option to say that you want to, in this case, read and write. The other option, as I said, you can say just read the information and not write back. So this is a kind of a security thing where you can be sure that the system is not writing back to the system. Then the sync server, I think you have seen this already, what Ingvar and Simon showed you. Pick the sync server. As I said, most of the customers have a dedicated one for SAP in the end. So that's in the end how you configure the synchronization against the SAP systems using our connector, which is, again, it's a certified connector, and it's proven that it's really working. So on the employee side, there are different types in SAP, which is important to know what types of information are on the sub HCM side. So it's not just the employee information. there are different other information like the organizational assignments. Even there are some family related information, bank details. Beside the personal information like addresses, there are many other information which belongs to the person. And also there are so-called plant data, like in which positions, working times. We have also customers, they want to add the information for the normal working days, for example, or for the leave information for holidays. So the time planning system in SAP, many customers are using this, for example, for the information which in the end then belongs to the identity manager system, where you can, for example, for holidays, give the information that another person can use the delegation function in Identity Manager. So this is also a very common scenario where customers want to use this type of information in SAP for the delegation feature in Identity Manager. So on this HCM side, this type of information has so-called info types. So there are I would say, most important one for the HCM data we are using are the so-called actions. Action means what the user in the end, or the HR data, if the user already joined, for example, if the user is active, if the user is on a leave process. So this in the end reflects in the so-called action info type. Then you have others like the organizational assignments, to which department, location, an identity or an HR record belongs to, the personal data, payroll status. So there are many more. So this list is not complete. And also all the, let's say, info type, which is 9,000, for example, are custom info types. So there are a lot of other info types available in the end in SAP. These are just a few of it, which can be used, for example, on the Identity Manager side. Because one important thing is this validity period. So each record in the end has this validity period, which says, for example, when the user is starting and when the user is leaving. In many SAP systems, you will see the end date, this December 31, 9999. This is a very common date, because if there is no end date, this is the standard date in the end in SAP. So then the record shows you, for example, in this example, the 19th of June 1999. This is in the end the start date. Also the start date in a department, which also belongs in the end to the HR record. And this is also used in the end when we read the information from the HCM system to see if a user already started, for example, because you can obviously create the user upfront. And so this is called future date information we can read in the end also from the SAP side. So a user, they can have only one active period in the end. So a user cannot have two different periods in the end on his record. And as you can see here, there is an initial creation, for example, when the date of hire, when the user really starts in the end. And then there are also different other periods, like when the user is moving to another department or something others has changed on the record. You have then this different validity period, but only one which is really active in SAP. So the others are in the end invalid, and they have an end date on the time when they change this. For example, in this type, the address is changed because he is moving. Then the old address has an end date when the address is not valid anymore in the system. So a user can have really a lot of this periods in the end on his record, but just one can be valid on his record in the end, which has in this case, as you can see, this 31 of December 9,999, which is so this kind of common end date for the active validity period. So in SAP, all this information are managed in the HR master data. The transaction code is this PA40, or there are different orders, like the 20 is just for displaying the information. With the 30 you can maintain. There are different transactions how to can handle this master data records in the end in SAP. And on our side, if you import this data or the connection in the end between the employee or the person, in our sync project, it's this HR employee active, which only reads the active person from the SAP records and creates, based on this information, then the employees or the person in Identity Manager. For the work days of the employees, we are normally using the info type 0041. That's the recommended way by SAP. The problem is that many customers are using something different and not this 41. So this is also something you have to take care on, which dates in the end the customer is using for this work days on our side. So 41, again, it's the recommended way, but it's not really used by all the customers. So many customers, they are using other date fields on the SAP record for this type of information in the end. Another specific is the communication data. On our side, it's the phone numbers, the email addresses, and in SAP, it's the info type 0105, which has the email addresses, phone numbers, and there are some other information related also to SAP, which contains this communication data. And this is also something which is a nice functionality, which is then directly on the identity object. We can maintain also this type of information. Then the HR org unit, this reflects the department, the cost centers, and the other information we read from SAP. And last is the HR org unit manager. So we read from the org information in SAP, we can read the manager and then assign directly to the department or to the employee data. We can assign the manager directly on our side in the system. So this is also a very nice functionality. And this is in the end the standard of the sync project. If you go to the sync project, then you will see this specific information like the HR org unit. There are different schema types in the end also for org units. So the org unit all shows you all the org units, and the org unit type O just shows you for the org unit type O. There are different types like the departments with the org type O. So there are very specific other org unit types also available in SAP. For the departments, we are using this org unit type O, which gives you in the end all the departments. And also, as you can see here, there is a validity start and an end date also for the org unit. So beside the HR object for the employee, also the org information or the organization can have a start and the end date in the end in the system. Also, you can see the change date. Then also the object ID, which in the end is used standard. When we import the data, we put this information also on the Identity Manager side in the system. So we are using this object ID in the end to identify the organization on SAP side when we do updates also through the connector to the departments on our side. The same for the org unit manager. So as you can see here, the organizational unit ID, which in the end reflect the position ID. The position ID, this is also something which belongs to the organizational management in SAP. So a user can have a dedicated position. A position could be, for example, manager or technician or whatever. So also this position ID is something customers use time to time also to build the business roles directly, where then they import the data to create automatically business roles. So you can really use all this information to automatically maintain also a lot of functionalities in Identity Manager. And the last in the end is the employee ID of the assigned position, which in this case reflects the manager in the end for this organization. Then also on the HR data, we have again in the schema the active, which filters. It's a predefined filter which filters the active identities or HR records in the end on the HR side. And here you can see then all the info types with all the information. Like again here, it's the position, it's the org unit. So you can see here exactly the same information as before, which belongs in the end to the identity or to the HR record for this user in the system. Then in this HR employee active schema, you see all the different info types. So for example, the 32, which is the 32, I think is some organizational assignments, and also some other information. Then you have also the 105, which are the communication data, as you have seen before. So all the different info types we read directly from the system, like room number or other information like the license plate of the car. So all these info types you can see here are the pre-configured info types we read out of the box through this schema HR employee active in the end. And as I have showed before, you can extend this by extending this connector through the XML file. You can read also other info types we have not in our standard schema. Then also the information, if you're not using this HR employee active, what you can see here is now the difference. On top, you see the standard schemas like the employee active, the org unit manager, the 41 for the work days, 105 for the communication data, and the 709. I think I have some other slides for this as well after to show you and explain what this means. If you update the connector and read all the available schemas, you can see we read much more than just this information from the HR person table. Also, we can read all the users, and this is what you can see here with this dummy test user. So you can see here there are 3 different records in the event available, but we are only reading the last one, which has the end validity period of this December 31, 9,999. And all the other 2 records, they are limited to end date. So in this employee active schema, we are only reading the last one, which is the current active record in the end in the system. Then also the positions. So this is what I said before. We also can read the positions in SAP. And this again is used, as you can see here, the text, for example, service technician. And this position, this is something which many customers are using to build their business rules, for example. So also this, if the customer is or wants to use this, then you have the option here with positions to also use this schema type in the end to build directly the business roles in Identity Manager. This 0709, this is also a specific functionality because in SAP it's possible to have multiple HR records. So I would say it's a bit similar to our master or main identity and sub-identity. So a very common scenario is if a customer has a holding structure and employees are working for a percentage for the holding and the main part for a dedicated company. And with this, you have the possibility also to read this master record, which normally is stored in this 0709. We can read the master record and then also create this master sub-record part in Identity Manager. So this is the specific object in SAP reflecting this master record on the HR side as well. And in the sync project, you have then only, so there is just one property in the end which gets synced for this master identity in the end, which is created then also on our side, this master record. So that's for the HCM employee data. And the second part is for user and role management. So if the customer, for example, only wants to connect SAP and they have a different HCM system and only wants to maintain the roles and profiles, then on our side, you have to use this the base administration or the CUA subsystems connector to connect to the SAP system. And this in the end reads all the information for the SAP basis information like the company information, groups, the clients, the parameters, profiles, roles, user, profit center, all the dedicated objects which belongs in the end to the basis functionality in SAP. And this creates then the whole structure of the subsystem, like all the clients which belongs to this system, including all the roles, profiles, which then will be synchronized to the identity manager in the end. And in SAP, you can see then this nice hyperview functionality, which also then is available for all the SAP specific functionalities, like showing you the subsystem with all the clients, including the sub-license. This is also a very nice feature because you can also do sub-license management. This is a very, I would say, nice functionality because it can save money also in the end to the customer, because in the end, the customer has to pay SAP based on the license usage. And beside this functionality, where it gives the possibility to also do license management in SAP, our colleague Abdullah built a nice functionality called, or it's part of the behavior-driven governance, which is coming soon also as a standard in our product, which allows you also to see if a user not just is using a sub-license, also a user is using a dedicated transaction in SAP, which belongs to a role the user has in his entitlements. And then we can run also an attestation to inform either the user directly or the manager or the role owner to ask them if this license or this role is still used or required, because you can assign a license to the role, and based on this you can change in the end the sub-license, because the different sub-license price-wise this could have a huge impact in some types, several thousands of euros difference between which license a user is using in the end. Or if a user anyway needs the license because he is maybe not in the department anymore, and we have not removed the license as well, and only removed the role and not the license, but we keep the user, for example, in SAP, then the user has still this license assigned. So this allows you also to maintain the license information in the end, which again could have a huge finance impact in the end also to the customer. So don't forget to mention this if you are showing the SAP functionality as well to the customers. On the client, then you can see all the different objects which belongs to the client, like the sub-user accounts, the groups, the profiles, roles. So all this information which belongs to the client, you can also see then in this hyperview, which are available then directly in Identity Manager. And of course, the same for S/4HANA. So it's not just for the R3 system, it's the very same for the S/4HANA system. So for the sub user, there are also some other information beside the license parameters, also some of the communication information, like the fax number, phone number, SMTP, the email address. So there are also some others, and these are in our schema, in which tables in the end we are storing this this type of information. Also for the sub roles which are assigned to a user, there is also a validity time for this type of information. Like in this case, you can see the user has some roles, in this case these two roles, which are already delimited, so it's only available for 2 or 3 months, and then the system will remove automatically this assignment. So also this is the same functionality for also roles and profiles. So every object in the end has this validity period where also we are able to maintain in the end. And we read this information directly from SAP as well. A very specific functionality for SAP role is this so-called validity period, because there is a change between the version 7 on our side as well from the connector side. So you have to be sure that you know the right version. I think if you do a new implementation, it doesn't matter, because then it belongs, or we have also to use the last one, because this in the end is how we read this information or use this information as well in on our side in the end. Because the difference then is it's not 9,999, then it's 9,998, which is used, and the validity from date then is not this 190101. That's the difference in the end, how we handle this. And this can also, will have some issues then in the synchronization project if you are using the wrong parameter. So subgroup, sub-profiles. So again, it's how it's in our schema. So which tables in the end we are using to store the information. And if you have to configure something, or if you have to do something, these are the different schemas we are using in the end on our side. So from the SAP side, if you want to see information or which transaction in the end we are using is the SU01. So this is the user management side in the end, where users are maintained or created. And this in the end are all the information we are reading from, I would say this transaction in the end, which is behind all the information. We are, based on this information, we are creating the sub-user account as well on our side. So the sub-user account, which belongs to a client with all the roles and profiles. And if you go on the SAP side, there are different tabs. like for example the address information. So this is really one-to-one the information we are reading from the SAP side. So this SU01, the user management information, as well the login data. So it's exactly the same information we read from the SAP side, as well the phone number, parameters. So all this information are read inclusively the SNC information. So this is also a very important part, because we can also manage this SNC name. So if a user is created on the SAP side and they have not configured this SNC part, we have also the possibility to write back this SNC information based on the schema which is used on the customer side in the end to create this SNC name. Then the role functionality, which is normally used by the PFCG transaction to create roles. This in the end is reflecting the roles on our side. SAP, they have different type of roles. It's the single role and the collective roles. So the collective roles normally has at least one or more single roles. So this is how SAP works in the end. And in this role management transaction, you can then see the role and all the information which belongs to this role in the end. So which menus, authorization are used in the end. And this, it's the same like for the user. It's one-to-one. We have the same object and the same attributes in the end with the same information on our side in the end. As a role normally or a role has a profile assigned as well, or can have a profile assigned in the end, which contains all the transactions. And this in the end also is the same as you can see here. You see also the profile which belongs to the transaction. That's really exactly the same in Identity Manager as you can see on the SAP side. So if you show this to SAP administrators, they normally like this, how it works. Also the parameters in the end, as I said, is system-wide and not client-wide. So also the parameters which belongs to the user, we can also read from the SAP system with the different parameter objects, like in this case, the German Buchungskreis. So that's the part where in the end, it's a financial information technically in SAP where the user belongs to. Then sub-license, we have also the possibility, as I said, to read this information and assign this different type of license then directly to the role, and to remove this if a user has not a dedicated role. So for example, the developer license, this is or was at least in the past one of the most expensive license. So if a user is not in the dev center, for example, and is moving somewhere else, you can remove also then this license, and again, the customer can save a lot of money. The cost centers, this is also information we can read directly from SAP. That's also possible. The difference with this central user administration, as it says, it's a central user administration. So on the SAP side as well, then on our side, without the CUA, the role is directly in the end in the client assigned to the user. If in the end a CUA is available, so on the left side, the difference is that the role, or when you configure this, the role has not just the role name in it, it has also the client name in it. So that's the difference in the end. You get a different or an additional attribute in the configuration in the end, where you also have to say in which of the child clients you want to assign this role in the end. So all the configuration goes via the central client, and in the central client it's configured to which of the child clients you want to assign this role as well. And this is the different why we have additional tables and different connections in the end. There are also other BAPIs or RFC calls used in the end to maintain this relation on SAP side. So also for the license in the end, a license can be assigned to, or the same license can be assigned to different, or from the central and also to the child system. This is what it's reflecting here. So you can see to which child system in the end the user account is maintained to. So the user in the end technically will be created through the CUA system, and in additional also on this client 810 with all the assignments which are configured in the end on the CUA system. So that's the idea of this functionality. So also license in the end will be assigned to the user account on the dedicated client system. So last is the authorization model in with our connector. So we have also the possibility to read all the authorization objects from SAP, and the idea in the end is that an SAP user or a person can have more than one SAP user, obviously. The user belongs to a composite role. It is technically possible to assign a single role directly to an SAP user, but it's not recommended. Normally users should have a composite role which contains then all the roles. There are customers, they are doing this. So I know customers, they have more roles than users in the end. But again, that's not the recommended way to do it from SAP as well. But the user normally has a composite role which contains roles. The roles contains profiles and or more than one profile, and the profile in the end has the permissions assigned. So the authorization, transactions, all this in the end are assigned to profiles, and this in the end gives the permission in SAP to the dedicated transactions or what the user in the end technically can do in SAP. And this information is also what we can read in the end from SAP. So all the role assignments, including the profile assignments, and then this is what we build in the end also in Identity Manager. And we read also the transactions and the authorization object information. And this is something which is part of the connector. It's a very nice functionality. It's very same like what SAP is providing with their GRC functionality. The thing is, we can combine this information then not just for the SAP world, we can combine this in SOD policies, for example, also with anything else like AD, Azure, whatever. And this is a limitation which is not that possible with the sub-GRC functionality. And we have many customers using these functionalities in our solution. So again, all this information like the profiles, the transactions, like this FS00, it's I don't think it's a financial because financials are FE. And if you have, for example, access to the user management SU01, you will see then also the transactions SU01 on this side in the end. And how this looks like then technically is, so you see the in the end the authorization object with all the activities, the transaction object levels, so all this T-code stuff you see. Then same like in SAP, you see this in Identity Manager in the end. And this is really, as you can see, same functionality, very nice functionality in the end we can provide also to customers using SAP. And on the audit part, it looks then like this. So also this is a graphical way where in the end the customer can build their SOD policies. So there is no need, no requirement in the end to create fancy XML files. So we have really the possibility to build then this audit rule directly in our wizard. And this example exactly shows you the user SU01 for the transaction PFCG for the role maintenance, as well for the user maintenance, the SU01, with all the activities in the end which are or should be checked if the user is in such combination or has such combinations with the all the different activities, transactions. We can then build SOD policies based on this information to do then this SOD check upon a user is requesting a new role, or even a user has already some of this roles assigned to the user. We can also build so-called variable sets then for this. So which means a dedicated value. Instead of typing in the value, we can use a variable. And this variable then can be used instead of typing in directly hard-coded in a function definition a value. So we can use just this variable, and you have only to change the variable in the end. So you don't need in each of the function definitions, you don't need to change then the value in all the 1000 function definitions. You just need to change then the variable, for example. So the variable then is automatically updated. So this is a very, very nice functionality. And when such a function definition is created and is assigned in the end in the compliance module, the system goes then and checks against all the existing affected groups and affected users. So it's then really goes into the system and checks against every information you have in the system. So it's not just the preventive control if someone is requesting something. In this case, you have also the detective control, which the system then checks against all the information if there are already violations in the system. So I think this you have already seen from Simon and Ingvar, how to build such an SOD policy in the end in the system. It's again very same for SAP, and this is really the nice feature because there you can say then not just SAP function definition, you can combine this then really with everything else in Identity Manager with any other system. You can build such SOD policies, and this is really something SAP can't provide with their GRC functionality in the same way in the end.
If I interrupt you there, Rito,
Yep.
in the bootcamp environment, there is one SAP rule defined, so you can look into it. It's not going to make any sense if you change it, of course, but you can see how it's built up with the functions and so on.
Perfect. So then you can play around there as well. So again, nice functionality, and I think it's really even this wizard, it's a really nice functionality which allows customer to build this without any XML file configuration, whatever. Then also the configuration settings. I'm not sure if you have explained this, Ingvar, already, what this means.
Nope.
Okay, so there you have also then the option to configure what happens if you change something on this rule or how the behavior of the rule you configured what happens then in the system, if it should use the schedule in the end, if you want to check any new change or assignment. So there are different options then how in the end, when you create this rule, what should be done in the system then by using the scheduling or doing directly or whatever. So
just for everyone's information, I think we've got the option of calculate immediately
Yeah.
switched on. So that's going to not have the schedule.
Yep. So this is then how, the behavior in the end of this. So in the configuration, there are some of the settings. You have to be sure that it's set, like the compliance check. What's the behavior in the end? So there are 2 options. You have also to check if these are configured in the right way. And in the end, that's what this compliance add-on is doing in on our side. And define sub-functions. That's also how you build the sub-functions in the end, so-called. Again, there is a deeper bootcamp for this, explaining all this information or how to build this in SAP. So the next point is the SAP BTP. That's the business.
Reto,
Yeah.
sorry, may I interrupt? What do you think about having break now? It's 1:15.
Yes, we can do.
Yes, because I think it's maybe worthwhile. It's heavy content.
Yes.
So for
so they can
everyone, don't
digest it. They've got thumbs up from the attendees, right? You can continue then after the lunch break. Is that okay with you, Rito?
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so should we have 1 hour or do you want to have less? Please put it in the chat. So usually we have the hour, but of course we can also do less.
Write 45 or 1 in the chat. If you want 45
Right.
minutes, 1 hour, we have 1
1
vote.
hour. We got yes.
Yes.
It's probably an hour.
Yeah. So Susanne, do you bring up the without getting kicked out of the meeting? Can you bring up
I
the
hope.
lunch break